private member is accessible only within the class. Product ID is accessible because it is public in access. Protected is also not accessible. That means, you see, I am trying to use price base object dot price, and it is not available because, see, it is not accessible. Now, what is the point about protected? Point about protected is it defines the accessibility within the class. Inside that base class, if you want to use, you can use it. Within that class, protected is accessible. Outside the class, you cannot access protected and private. If you want to access protected outside the class, it is accessible outside the class only by using derived class object. Only by using derived class object. Currently, our object here is base class object. Through base class object, you can access only public member. You cannot access the private or protected members. A protected member is accessible only through derived class object. That means the object that we created in print method is a base class object. That's the reason it will give only public access. So let's make this object as derived class object. That means I will create a derived object, and it is of type not base, it is of type derived. So we are creating a derived class object. When we are creating a derived class object, this is a derived class object. Let's try. Through derived class object, you can access the public member. That means we can access product ID, the public member. Through derived class object, you can access the protected member. Protected member is price. Price is also accessible here. We are accessing the protected member also. The public member and the protected member. But private is not accessible because private is not accessible by any means. Private is not accessible by any means. Is not accessible by any means. Private is accessible only within the class. Only within the class. You cannot access from another location. So name is never accessible. Through base class object also you cannot access. Through derived class object also you cannot access. So you can access only within the class. Inside this class, if you want, you can access it. So how to access inside the class, outside the class, I will give you examples. No need to worry about that. But I hope these three are clear to everyone. Public, private, and protected. So what is the point about public? It defines accessibility from any location. So here important is a public member is accessible by using a base class object or by derived class object. It is accessible by using both base class object and derived class object. Private, defines accessibility only within the class, no other option. Protected, it defines accessibility within the class, and outside the class not by using base class object, only by using derived class object. Protected means it is not accessible through base class. It is accessible only through derived class object. Derived class object. So usually for extended methods, we use protected access because methods are extended from another class through a derived class. That is why we need to configure protected. Later examples I will show you. Right now, in this example, I will copy this example. In this example, so we have seen the situation in this example. So I will give a note here. Product ID and product ID is public and price is protected. So derived obj is an derived class object. Hence, it can give access to both public and protected members. Public and protected members. It can give access to both public and protected members. Access to the both public and protected members. So derived class object, derived obj is a derived class object, hence it can give access to both public and protected members. Now if I change that example, that means I change this class, derived class. Base class is same. In the derived class, if I create a base class object, that means I will write here, change the following. Okay, then what happens is, this is a base class type. Then only product ID is accessible. So price is invalid. So this is a base object. Through base object, you can access only public members. So price is protected, you cannot access. So in this example, product ID is public and price is protected. Base obj is an base class object. It cannot access protected members. Base object is an base class object. It cannot access the protected members. It can access only the public members. So we have three important options to understand. So public, the private, and the protected. So whenever you are defining the members in a particular class, so the members of a class can be defined with any one of these access modifiers. So based on the access modifier, we can understand the restriction. So how we can use them in different examples we will see. But initially, knowing about the access modifiers is important for us. Still, we haven't learned any designing of classes, but we are learning about the basic rules of defining the members in a class. So this is one point. The point is, the members in a class can be public, private, protected,